So today I'm going to show you how to make a gathered dust ruffle for a bed. You can see here I have some twin beds that were my kids when they were younger, and I'm going to use them in my guest bedroom now. So I did a couple things before I got started to make them taller. You can see that I added some risers because they're pretty short for an adult. So I found these at Walmart. They were only like $6, so really good price. But to get rid of, rather than have them stay red, I want to cover that. So what I'm going to do is create a dust ruffle that's gathered, and it will cover up the red. I'm using a canvas drop cloth. I also got this at Walmart for like $10, so really good price and easy to use. So let's get started. First I'm going to show you how to measure so you know how to cut your fabric for the dust ruffle. So the first thing you're going to want to do is measure the top of the bed. So if I go across and write that down, I have 38 inches across and 75 inches long. That's going to be the measurement for my top piece. And then I also have to measure what's called the drop, so how long I want the dust ruffle to be. So in this case, it's going to be about 21 and a half. And so I'll show you, here's the measurements of how you calculate it. So the top is 75 by 38, so that's going to be your top flat piece. That can be any fabric. And then you can see the drop is 21 and a half inches. That's how long your dust ruffle fabric needs to be. And so to figure out the perimeter, I have two sides at 75 plus the end at 38. So 188 inches total. That would just be a flat dust ruffle. I want it gathered, so I'm going to multiply that by 2.5 times. So based on that measurement, I'm going to need 470 inches. Divide that by 36 inches because that's a yard of material. And I would need 13 yards to make 2 dust ruffles. If you're only making 1 dust ruffle, you would just divide that by 2. So here you can see I have cut out a piece of lining fabric, and this is just covering the top of the bed. So this is just going to be what I attach the dust ruffle to after I gather it. It's the exact size that we measured, 75 by 38. Okay, so now I'm going to cut the fabric for the dust ruffle part. So I bought these drop cloths at Walmart, and they're 6 feet wide and 9 feet long. So the 6 feet equals 72 inches. So I'm going to divide that into thirds so that I have 3 long strips that I can sew together to make the dust ruffle. So I'm going to cut this into 24-inch pieces so that I'll have 3 of them out of 1 drop cloth. So here I have it open, already open and laying on the table. And you can see I've got my measuring stick. I just keep it at 24 inches, and then I start cutting on the edge, making sure that it stays straight. So I'm going to make the strip 24 inches. So I just follow the measuring tape. I have it laid out. And to get yourself started, you just cut following the measuring stick. Once you get a little bit going, you can then fold the fabric up and make sure that the edges stay straight. Put your yardstick back on and keep cutting. And so I'm going to do that all the way down the fabric, so then I'll have a nice long equal strip that is 24 inches wide. Okay, so I've taken all of the strips and I ironed them to get some of the wrinkles out. And next I'm going to sew the 4 strips together so I have one long one. So you put the 2 ends together. Now this fabric really doesn't have a right side or a wrong side, it's the same. So it doesn't matter which way you put them together. But like if you did have a pattern of fabric, you would put them right sides facing together, sew it there, and that way when you open it up, your seam is on the wrong side, like that. But it doesn't matter for the strap cloth because it's the same. So all I'm going to do is piece them together and pin it. And then I will sew the two together. And then after I sew it, I'm going to flip it over and iron the seam down flat. Okay, now that I've pieced all 4 of the strips together, I'm just going to iron the seams down flat for each place where I sewed. Okay, so I have all the pieces together sewn into one long strip. So I think it worked out to be 12 yards, which will be enough to gather the dust ruffle. Before I do the gathering part though, I'm going to hem it because it's just easier to do it now. So in order to make the hem, you do like a double fold. So I'm folding once about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch, and then I'm folding again. And that makes it a nice smooth hem. And then I'll pin that. And I'll just keep working down all of the fabric, keeping it a nice even, about the same size. So I'll measure it along the way, and after that I'll sew it. Okay, so now you can see I have ironed the hem in the entire length and I pinned it. So now I'm just going to start sewing it. Okay, so I have the entire piece of the dust ruffle hemmed now, and so now I'm going to gather it. And the easiest way to do that is to use this gathering tape. You just sew it to the material and then pull the string in order to make it gather. I'm going to use my measuring stick because I want the finish length to be 21.5. So that means I need the extra inch up here to sew it to the flat piece on top of the bed. So I'm going to pin gathering tape across the top and sew it on. Okay, so I have the gathering tape pinned to the fabric, and now I'm going to sew it. And you can see that center line running down the middle, that's the cord. So you have to be careful not to sew over that. So I'm going to sew just on the bottom edge of the gathering tape, and then I won't cross over the cord. So you can see I've sewn the cording on. I only did it on one side. I think you're technically supposed to sew both sides, but it will work even with the one side. So if you remember my original calculations, the total perimeter of the bed on the 3 sides is 188 inches. So basically, you start gathering the fabric by pulling the string until you get to 188 inches. And I would suggest you gather from both ends, or if you're going to just do one end, make sure you sew the other end shut, because you can pull the cord completely out and you don't want to do that. So you just start pulling, gathering the fabric up, sliding it down. Periodically you'll have to stop and measure it, because you want to keep pulling the string until you get to the 188 inches that will go around the entire bed. So I gathered all the fabric up, and now it equals 188 inches. But when you get to the length that you need, make sure you tie off the string and knot it at each end, and then you can cut off all the extra. And then after I do that, I just lay it out and try to even out the gathering, because there'll be places where it's too tight and others where it's not gathered enough. So you just work it on the table and try to get it as even as possible. So once I have the gathers spread out the way I wanted them, I'm now going to attach it to the top piece that fits flat on the box spring of the mattress. So I'm not going to do, this is the headboard area, so there won't be a dust ruffle there, but I'm going to do all of 3 sides. So you just pin the outward facing side of the dust ruffle to the top and go all the way around all 3 sides, and then after you've got it pinned on, then you're going to sew it. And just as you're pinning, make sure that the gathered edges are facing up so they won't show once you sew it and create that seam. So I'm just going to pin that all the way around. So I now have the ruffle pinned to the flat sheet all the way around, and I'm just going to sew it all the way around the whole thing on the edge. So you can see here I finished sewing all the way around all 3 sides. I took the pins out as I was sewing, so you can just double check for that. But then you just flip it over to the other side and you can see how the dust ruffle is going to look. So at this point, if you want to iron it again, you can, if it looks wrinkled, and then you just put it on the bed. So here's the final product. You can see I put the dust ruffle on, it's gathered. I just paired it with a simple white quilt. It looks pretty good. Now I just have one more to make. And I'm going to make a slip cover for the headboard, so you can watch my other video for that. Thanks for watching.